Well, good evening. My name is Rick Ferris, and as President of the Warning ISD Board of Trustees, I hereby call this Warning ISD Board of Trustees meeting to order. It is now 6:04 p.m., and I certify a quorum is present, and the meeting has been posted in the time and manner required by law. The special call meeting at this evening is for the public. Although this meeting is public, comments and questions from the audience will be confined to the time designated for citizens to address the board. The board will not take action on any item tonight during this public hearing. During the public comments portion of the hearing, members will also not respond to any comments. Again, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Moving on to item number 3, public hearing for attendance boundary modification. May I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Regan? Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we are now in a public hearing. We are here tonight for a public hearing about the attendance boundary modification plan. Dr. Justin Terry, Superintendent of Schools, will begin the hearing with a presentation of the new plan. Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. First off, I just wanted to make sure that we recognize we do have students viewing our audio and video tonight. I just wanted to thank them for their participation tonight. Also, audience and board, just wanted to tell you that this is obviously not a normal board setting, but we appreciate everyone coming out tonight to be a part of our public hearing, and we wanted to provide as much safety and help as possible. So we are in kind of an auditorium setting to allow everybody to distance. So thank you for bearing with us. This is kind of outside of our norm. Board, obviously, you have a presentation in front of you. It is hard copy since you cannot see the screen, but we will work through slides as I present that replicate the packet that you do have in your hand. So I'm going to ask Ms. Morsack in the back to click through the slides as we work through the presentation. So I'll go ahead and get started, and just wanted to remind everybody that we are a very fast-growing school district, and we are growing. We just received a new demographer update over the last few weeks. And during this update, they actually escalated our growth projections. And just to remind everybody, these are projections, and they change every time we get an update. And of late, they've been increasing. We are now growing and projected to grow between 1,000 and 1,350 students annually over the next 10 years. Last year at this time, I think I was talking to our community, and we were projected to be a 20,000 student school district by 2030. That has now been escalated to a 20,000 student school district by 2027. The homes are continuing to be built. They're continuing to be built at a rate where they are projecting us to now double in size in the next 10 years. Today we are sitting at 12,860 students. Currently, we do have about 16 actively building subdivisions throughout our community, and we are now projected actually to have 15 additional future planned subdivisions that are on the books. We continue to be one of the fastest growing school districts in the state of Texas, and have really escalated even in the DFW area to probably the fastest growing school districts over 10,000. As you look at our community, I think this slide is very important to understand that these are the active subdivisions that we're seeing throughout our community in the green and the futures. And so as we have our hearing tonight, I want everyone to be aware that the growth is, although a little bit escalated on the north side right now, projected growth even as much as 4,000 homes towards the south side of 20 on the southwest boundary over on the south side of 20 in the Johnson School District. So we are growing very quickly. We've got over 2,500 lots that have already broken ground in 13 different subdivisions. So as we get into forecasting, I think you're aware that our demographer, Templeton Demographics, produces quarterly updates when it comes to our projections. And as you can see, where the yellow is where we reach capacity. And a year ago at this time, as we were sharing the same information out, that yellow was a little bit further off. So as it continues to encroach, we obviously have to look at providing additional seats for students and prepare for additional facilities to be built to make sure that we are having a seat for every child currently in the district, but also planning for the future as well. So as many of you are aware, with all of the yellow, we have already projected and approved 3 new schools to open in the fall of 2021, which is what we're here to specifically talk about tonight. First option will be open in Griffin Elementary, Jerry Helen Griffin Elementary School at Devonshire, off of Raven Hill Road. We also are underway on Rhodes Intermediate School as well as Jackson Middle School. Those 3 facilities will open this fall. And then, board, if you recall, last board meeting, we approved the construction projects now for 2 additional elementary schools that will break ground this March and are projected to open in the fall of 2022. And that will be Willett Elementary in the Gateways subdivision, as well as a new Johnson Elementary School, which will have expanded capacity, and that will be located in the Overland Grove School District as well. So as we begin to examine where we are as a district and also project out, as we open new facilities, it is imperative that as a fast-growing school district, we begin to look at our attendance boundaries. And as you're used to, I think we've done this for the past 3 years about this time of year. And some of them are smaller moves and adjustments, and some of them tend to be a little bit larger adjustments. And so when we talk about attendance zones, I wanted to also explain why is it that we have the need to adjust those boundaries. And so obviously the one that is very specific to us for next year is the opening of new schools. That allows us to not overcrowd our current schools. And so to make sure that our spaces continue to be utilized as efficient as possible and balance out those numbers so that our classrooms stay to where they are not overcrowded. And ultimately to ensure that every student today as well as in the future has a seat to sit in and receive quality education here at Forum. So just as a reminder to the board, where we are in the process, this is something that we've been consistent on the last 3 years and will again this year. As you're aware, we begin with fall projections and look at our current enrollments as well as analyzing the demographic updates that we received over the last month. Then we take and look at our current capacities and where that yellow line is on those projections. And then, as you'll recall, and I'll share these here in just a second, we prioritize through some of the parameters that we put in place as to what we'd like our demographer to look at as he begins to make a draft projection or a draft plan for us to start with in the rezoning process. So tonight, and you'll see this in bold, we are in the setting of continuing community feedback. And so we will have public comment that will be open a little bit later in the meeting. But that obviously that is part of our community feedback process. We'll take all of that feedback, share that with our demographer who's with us this evening, and we will make any adjustments that you feel necessary, and then hopefully have a plan adopted by the end of the year. As you recall, we have set rezoning goals in kind of priority list. And as a fast-growth school district, the first 2 are extremely important, and that is that we continue to optimize the space that we have in each of our campuses. We are seeing very abnormal growth throughout our school district, and with that, we have to be ready to have capacity where a subdivision may grow a little bit faster than another. So optimizing space and allowing for future growth is obviously the 2 that you prioritized in the past and will continue to do so. We also look at the campus proximity to our neighborhoods. I think that's very important, and we'll continue to do that, as well as natural lines. And those natural lines could consist of anything from large roads, greenways, creeks, those types of things that kind of have a natural barrier or boundary to them. You'll recall, in 2 years ago when we did this, there was a fifth one. We did remove that this year because we are not taking into account our dual language program, and I'll speak to that in a minute as well. So as we move forward with the opening of these 3 new schools, one thing I'd like to point out is a little bit of a change to how we look at rezoning and really our attendance zones as a whole. In the past, we've had elementary school zones and we've had secondary zones. With the opening of a 3rd middle school and intermediate and the expansion of our elementary schools, we are now looking at K4 zones, 5-8 zones, and 9-12 attendance zones. So there'll be 3 different attendance zones that we analyze annually as we move forward. The first one I'd like to address and make sure everybody's clear is that, and this is a good thing, anytime we don't have to impact families, that's always a priority for everyone. We know that. And this year, our attendance zone for high schools, we made an adjustment to that 2 years ago. And we believe that at this time that boundary can stay in place and there should not be any attendance zone adjustments to 9 through 12. So the high school attendance zone will not change for 2021 or 21-22. Elementary boundary plan, I wanted to share with you the draft plan that has been presented from our demographer. And as you know, with the opening of Devonshire Elementary School, or Griffin Elementary at Devonshire, we're looking at our elementary zones kind of in 2 parts. This year, you'll notice is that we're only sharing the northern elementary attendance zones because the following year, we will open 2 other elementary schools, and we'll have to look at attendance zone planning for our southern elementary schools. But in this case, our southern elementary schools will not be impacted for this school year. The northern zones, Lewis Elementary, the draft plan does not have any impacted areas as well. And so really Devonshire, the Griffin Elementary will really only take off some of the needs of capacity at Crosby Elementary and Blackburn specifically. And so you can see in the brown areas the projected and draft plans for where the Devonshire or Griffin Elementaries will be drawn as of today. The light blue area would be the Crosby Elementary Zone, and the Blackburn Elementary School Zone would be the purple area. And you'll notice, and I'd like to point this out, that Blackburn Elementary is a little bit smaller zone. Now, you'll recall that we've opened a Advanced Academics and Finance Academy, and doing very well. Really excited about continuing to run that program. And with the opening of that program, we now have, with this new line, the capacity to continue to grow that out. Okay? So, moving forward, that is kind of the elementary projection right now for the first draft of the elementary zones. Really, again, to summarize, only 2 impacted schools, and that is Crosby and Blackburn. The intermediate boundaries and middle school boundaries, as we open Rhodes and Jackson, are a little bit different than what we're used to, obviously. And part of that is, we've had 2 schools, and so when you take a school district and you have 2 schools, that's 2 pieces of pie that we can break the school district into. And obviously, when we open a 3rd, we have to take that large school district and look at then breaking that into 3 pieces of pie as a school district. So our demographers have taken the information that we provided, the priorities that you set, as well as our projections, and given us a draft plan as well for our intermediate, our 5 through 8 attendance zones. And you can see, I think that's up on the screen as well, the top left corner, which would include the light, I guess, yellowish area there. That is the projected zone for Jackson and Rhodes. To the right of that, the blue area would be Smith and Brown. And then to the south, the orangish area would be Warren in red. These projections take into account, again, the growth to help equalize some of the future overcrowding that you saw in the yellow areas in that projected 10-year enrollment projections from the developer. We do believe that this will help relieve some of the overcrowding we're seeing in the next 2 years, actually in the next year, at both Warren and Brown Middle School, as well as Smith and Ray Intermediate School. So as we look at these boundaries, one of the things we also want to take into account is not only the current roadways, but also the future accessibility of schools. And so I wanted to point out to you one thing that has recently been has popped up in the Gateway development just north of that, and that is, as you're aware, we've got some industrial buildings, Amazon, Goodyear area, right off of Gateway Boulevard. There is a road that's actually being installed right now called Akron Way. The projection is that would connect over to the Helms Trail Road that would, from a west to east standpoint, but also provide something new for us, which is a secondary north-south pathway that not only is Gateway Boulevard, but also now Windmill Farms Boulevard would connect to Helms Trail. There's also a future planned development off of that road, as well as additional industrial that they are breaking ground on right now. As we continue to grow and escalate the projections, although we talked about this breaking our attendance zones into from 2 into 3, also want to make you aware that, and you've seen some of these projections as well, that we're not far off from beginning to explore what number 4 is. And so as we think about that, just to keep in mind, we are an extremely fast-growing school district, very similar to a Prosper or Frisco. This annual review is something that we'll have to continue to do, that we'll have to continue to analyze and balance our enrollments at each of our campuses K through 12. And one of those would be then to look at the possibility of when that 4th middle and intermediate would come on when it's needed based off of the growth projections that we're continuing to see. Obviously, you would see we would recommend that the 4th intermediate and 4th middle create a quadrant system in the future for our school district. A few things I'd like to point out to you before I close up is, number one, the transportation. Anytime we change zones of transportation has really stayed consistent with our approach, and that is anything outside of a 2-mile radius that we will provide bus and transportation for, or anything that has to, any homes that may have to cross over a hazardous road that is identified as a hazardous road. It could be, right across the street from the school, and we provide busing just based on the hazardous road setting. So we'll continue with that same process that we've had in place, no matter where the boundaries end up. A couple other things I'd like to address, just to we get a lot of questions simply about our special programs, and this is something we have to look at each year to see where and which school has capacity for some of these programs. The first one is obviously our pre-K program. We went to a full-day program this year, and we will look to this year that kind of analyze once the boundaries are drawn, where the best place is for pre-K. But right now, we're projecting that pre-K would stay in the same location for another year that it is right now between Lewis and Crowder. Special education is another. We have multiple programs within the special education, special populations. Each of those programs are looked at on multiple levels, not only where the capacity is, but also where we combine programs to be as efficient as possible with our personnel. And so that is also analyzed each year, and we'll make some of those adjustments as needed this spring. The Dual Language Academy at Sullivan is a K-4 program, and we would recommend that continue to stay this year. No change to Crystal's dual language program, no change to that for the 21-22 school year, as well as the Advanced Academics and Fine Arts Academy would stay at Blackburn. no change to that program or those participants. And in fact, we'll begin the recruiting process to expand that. Right now, it's a first and second grade program. Next year, it'll grow to a minimum of K3, and we'll possibly looking at expansion to K4. So that is a little bit about our special programs. Not a lot of changes to that for next year. It doesn't impact a lot of people at this time. So, Mr. Ferris, I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you and provide some information to the board as well as on our participants here tonight, our public, and just excited about the growth of the family. And again, I always appreciate what the board's focus is to provide best education for all of our kids today and tomorrow. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. That is the presentation part of it. If you notice down front, we have two microphones, one over here and one over here. And we will call you up to the microphone one at a time. If you would, please respect the social distancing of others as you come forward to do that. As Dr. Terry said, this is, we find ourselves in another unique time in Corning ISD, and with the fast growth we've seen in the past. And there's been years in the early 2000s we had to do more frequent rezoning than we want to, but the growth demands it. And so we're finding ourselves moving back into that phase again where things will have to be evaluated annually. So if you're prepared to come and speak tonight, let me share some more information. We do have some laws or requirements here we have to honor during this public presentation time. So let me share some more rules for the rest of the evening. Speakers will only be permitted to address the board on the topic of the agenda of tonight's meeting. When you approach the microphone, please state your name and address. Ms. Morzak is down here front. She'll be your timekeeper tonight. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to present. I will give you a 30-second warning. I won't cut you off if you're near the end of your speech, but if it goes too long, I will have to, in respect to the next people in line, have to cut you off. So we'll try to stick to the time. Please respect the privacy of others and refrain from identifying students, employees, and other community members by name. The board requests that comments on this subject, whether positive or negative, be courteous and respectful. Disruption of the meeting will not be tolerated at any time. Any speaker with a specific complaint about district employees, decisions, or operational issues should present those to the complaint through the appropriate mechanism, which is the district's formal grievance process. Speakers who provide detail about a specific complaint will be stopped and be referred back to the district administration for the grievance process. So at this time, we'll move forward and begin our presentation. I have a list as you signed up tonight, and so at this time, I would like to call Tom over to this microphone. And then the next person, starting over here, will be Kayla. So if you want to make your way out that way, you can sit there by, and Tom will go first. Okay, Tom, when you're ready, go ahead, state your name, and the clock will begin.
Good evening, I'm Tom Sullivan. We live at 936 High Ridge. We live in Highland Prairie. Just like most of the people out here over my left shoulder, this subdivision was built in 1997 into a division of 168 homes with no room for expansion. We're built out. I mention this because on this, y'all emailed this neighborhood list. This is in an email from FISD. We're not on this list. So the children in the Highland Prairie that we represent have been on their current academic path for 8 years. They have many friends and relationships. We believe this modification would be detrimental to them. To uproot our kids, excuse me, to make them start over in one of the most crucial developmental times in their lives. Also, we have a petition signed here. We've got 168 houses and 168 signatures of people that disagree with this decision. And I made a copy of this if y'all want it. According to the last FISD meeting on YouTube, your goal is to move the fewest children and to have every child has a seat. Our concern is the focus seems to be more on the butts in the seats than the adverse effect it's going to have on our children. In Templeton demographics, who y'all used to draft the rezoning. So I went on their website. They have a sample from Hutto School District. And it has a lot of talk about economic outlook, housing markets, enrollment projections. While I understand those are all important factors in the decisions y'all have to make, the tough decisions y'all have to make, I saw nothing in their economic, or in their proposal here about how it's going to affect our kids. It seems like there's no study done on that. It's just all about the numbers in the rezoning. So there's many reports. One came out this November showing lockdowns, the pandemic uncertainty, increased anxiety and depression among adolescents, and this heightens concerns about their mental health. Research also shows that adolescents depend on their friendships to maintain and self-worth and manage anxiety and depression. As stressful as adolescents' relationships can be, they are also essential for the formation of personal identity.
30 seconds.
Taking our seventh graders that have been to school together since kindergarten and separating them from their friends is going to affect them. These kids had to deal with enough in 2020. COVID, virtual learning, maybe a loss of a loved one, or a parent that loses a job. Now we're telling them that we have to uproot them out of their school, from their friends, their teachers, their sports that they played with the same kids for 8 years, and to move them from that. So I realize y'all have tough decisions to make, and I just ask that you please consider the effect it's going to have on our kids.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. So next. Next to that microphone, if you want to make your way down there, is Campbell, over there. And then over here on this side is Michaela. You can start, introduce your name, and then the clock will begin.
Hi, my name is Michaela Vijanowski. I live in 10022 Highland Prairie Lane, and I've been here for 11 years. When my parents first told me about rezoning, I said, what the heck does that mean? After they elaborated, the first thing I thought was, what about my friends? I built strong friendships over the past 11 years, and I think I won't ever plan on losing them. Another major thing that the rezoning will affect is my sports. It will affect the bond I have established with my coaches and teammates. It could also possibly ruin any chance I have of playing sports at Thorny High School, which I've been looking forward to since kindergarten. When we started basketball, Coach Baldwin, which is the high school 18 basketball coach, said, that's a pretty good athletic kid. And he said, I look forward to seeing you in freshman year. Well, if he doesn't see me next year, I feel like I could lose that opportunity, and that is actually really important to me. If the rezoning happens, this means that I'll be going to 3 different schools in 3 years. And if I'm coming back to attend Thorny High School, then that means I'll be going to 4 schools in 4 years. And since I don't even really know what else to say, to be honest. This is just why I think that Highland neighborhood should not be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Next to this microphone over here will be Paige, if you'd like to come up and prepare. And then over here on this side, we have Campbell. And you'll take your name and the clock will begin.
My name is Campbell. Do I state my address?
Yes, you may.
I live at 15122 Plantation Road. My name is Campbell. I'm a 7th grader at Warren Middle School. I'm in advanced classes and involved in girls' athletics. As an athlete for Warren, leaving my teammates and my group of friends would be devastating. If I go to Brown, I will be leaving my teammates and friends and then playing against them. I will not leave my teammates, those are my teammates and will always be. With people who want to be in athletics like me and other girls, and even the boys, it won't be the same because there's not a hope, it's not a hope anymore. There's a missing piece. This is our school, this is where we want to go, and we do not want to go to Brown. We want to stay at our school with our friends, our teammates, our teachers, and even our school staff. This is our school that we love, and all of us are involved in extracurricular activities. If you choose to move the class of 2026 to Brown Middle School, you will have moved our class 4 different schools, 4 different years in a row.
Thank you, Campbell. Appreciate it. Stepping over to this side where Campbell just was, Takesha will be next. And over here, I think we have, is it Paige?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Paige Brown, and I'm at 16333 Prairie Meadow at the Highland Prairie Estate. I'm going to state that changing schools can be a difficult time for both social and emotional experiences for all students. However, according to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, 1 in 8 children actually suffer from anxiety. The current 7th grade students have been put through so much since 5th grade mid-year, being told that they will be having to change schools and to just accept and conform to the changes. The students who have suffered from both PTSD and anxiety and all other students are all just having to feel a part of this, the Forney ISD family, and creating their relationships with all their teachers and administrations and having an ability to look up to them each in at least a 2-year time span. However, this is in regards to as well their hormone levels, that these students each have not had the ability to create the relationships with these teachers and the administrators at any given time due to the changing of the schools. Speaking just for my own child in itself, Warren administration has been able to help out tremendously with both her PTSD and anxiety. The APs at Warren are the first ones who have actually have truly cared about her and her welfare and her as a student and not as a number. Students with anxiety and PTSD need the following in order to have their best education at heart: a stable friend group, friends, sports, bands, FFA, stability groups of educators and administration. The least amount of change at all possible would be their best bet. And again, my personal recommendation for this zoning change is to allow the students that are going in, that would go into the 3rd middle school, having just the 5th grade and 7th grade transition and linking them as a one school. The school I went to in Mesquite my freshman year was a 9th grade only, and allowed them to grow at that point and not having the least amount of students in an effect. That is all I have.
Thank you, Paige. Following Paige at this microphone will be Shelby. Over here, I think we have Stephen.
Good evening. I'm Keisha Robertson. My address is 1329 Meridian Drive. My husband and I have 2 children that here. My son is 7th grade at Warren, and my daughter is 5th grade at Ray. And they're just here just standing with me today, just so you all can see that they're the ones that are really going to be affected by this. Students in your age bracket will be the most adversely affected by this rezoning plan. When all said is done, my son will have attended 4 different schools in 4 years. He was a 6th grader at Ray, now a 7th grader at Warren, next year an 8th grader at Brown, and then a freshman at Forney High School. It will be a similar situation for my daughter. I did not move here for my kids to sample the schools of Forney ISD. I'm a substitute teacher as well for Forney ISD, and I have seen how the kids are still adjusting to the new normal due to the coronavirus. Their sense of normalcy keeps getting out of whack. Being in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade is challenging enough, as you already know, during normal times. They started back making new friends, getting to know their teachers and coaches, establishing relationships, as everyone else has said. And school's a safe place for many kids. Imagine how they feel knowing that they'll have to start over at another school, yet again next fall and the fall after that, and that for the next few years. This instability will affect many students in a negative way, mentally, psychologically, and unfortunately academically. It's hard for some to truly stay focused and engaged with so much transition. They'll get the message that people aren't really caring as much about them. My husband and I did research before we moved here, and we thought that where we're at would be a good fit for our family. And it just doesn't feel like our children are really, truly being considered right now as this proposal is being drawn up. I don't like to sugarcoat things, and I already told my daughter that our neighborhood has been rezoned, that she'll have to go to Smith Intermediate next year. Like many kids, she cried about it. It's been really sad emotionally. And remember, most of our kids didn't see their classmates for at least 5 months before school opened back up in August. And that's not even taking into the account some of the kids that are doing virtual learning. So I really, really want you to please reconsider this, and at least grandfather the zones 1 and 2 for Gateway specifically. And remember that how this will affect the kids that are currently in the 5th to the 7th grade. They're the ones that are going to be affected the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Shelby here? Are you Shelby?
Yes.
Okay. Then over here on this side, should I have Thomas? Go ahead, Shelby.
Okay, I'm Shelby. I live at 1276 Greenbelt Drive, also in the Gateway neighborhood. I'm coming to you tonight asking you to reconsider the rezoning of Gateway Parks. My family and I moved to Forney just a year ago. So I have a 7th grader at Warren and a 5th grader at Ray, and a 7-year-old who is at the Fine Arts Academy. So change was not easy for them last year. However, they've been able to adjust and make new friends. And this past weekend, watching my son play baseball with the 7th grade middle school for their middle school matchup team was really fun to watch. I'm finally able to see them adjust and make new friends despite being out of school for so long and despite having to change schools. If they were having to rezone, it would be their 5th school in 5 years. So we've enjoyed becoming part of the Forney family. We want their new relationship to continue to flourish. And then I talked to my husband, and he wanted me to add that the concept about the highway being the historical dividing line has always been what we were kind of told in the past, and that we made our purchasing decisions to be in Gateway with that understanding. So I know our subdivision has kind of gotten together and created some surveys when we became aware of the decision. And many people were intending to homeschool or find other alternatives if this was to happen. And we hope that's not the case and that we can stay part of the Forney family and we would consider rezoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shelby. Okay, Thomas is over here. Our next speaker down on this side will be Jordan. Go ahead, Thomas.
My name is Thomas Sullivan. I live at 936 Havers Drive. If I went to a different middle school, I would not have the same feeling I do at Warren. This is because I would not have many friendships that I have run since kindergarten. I have always wanted to play on the Forney High School football team and graduate from Forney High School this year. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Thomas. On this side down here where Thomas was, could I have Carla? Okay. Are you Jordan?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, my name is Jordan Klein, and I live at 1548 Sugarberry Drive in the Gateway subdivision. Like many of the other families here, we don't want to be rezoned. And I know y'all have a tough job. The numbers are the numbers. A lot of times y'all are thankless. But at the end of the day, you know, my wife and I moved here just a little bit more than a year ago because I got a new job in Fort Worth. And I was willing to make the sacrifice for an hour and a half commute one way every day just so my kids could go to the school district that they're currently going to. I think, you know, like I said, the numbers are the numbers. If y'all got to do what y'all got to do, we just like to ask you guys to grandfather in phase 1 and 2 from Gateway, and that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And then, this is Carly. Our last speaker on this side over here will be Scott.
Good evening. I'm Carly Fairley, and I live at 12145 Helms Trail. And my husband and I moved to Forney about 5 years ago, and we would have 3 children impacted by this rezoning. When we moved here, we were renting, and we looked around for a long time to try to find the perfect spot for our family. And we found that the Highland Prairie community was that spot. Not only because there would be no more growth within that community, but also because of the schools. We chose that area specifically for those schools. As I've been thinking about this rezoning and talking about it with my daughter who would be impacted next year, I started thinking about Forney ISD slogan, Forney family. So you guys talk about all the time. When I was driving here, I saw 2 yard signs with Forney family. I saw the marquee. And when I was signing up to speak, I saw masks that say Forney family. So what does a Forney family mean? What does a Forney family represent? A family represents support, stability. It represents somewhere you can create strong relationships. And this rezoning is doing the opposite of that. When we want our children to have that stability, especially coming off this hard COVID year, and throwing them into a place where they have to have new friends, create that new relationships with faculty, that's going to cause all sorts of issues. And speaking just as much as it's going to impact our students, I'm a parent that loves to be involved in the schools. And I'm going to Henderson, two of my daughters go to Henderson. I really enjoyed working with that facility, and now again, we're gonna have to build all those new relationships. So when I hear you guys say Forney family, and you're thinking about those strong relationships and creating that stability for our children, I hope you really consider this rezoning, because doing it year after year after year doesn't create that stability that our children need. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Scott.
Good evening. My name is Scott Berg. I'm at 1321 Meridian Drive. I'm in the Gateway community. I live there with my wife and my 3 kids. Over the weekend, we gathered a petition in Gateway, and we gathered 147 signatures, which is the vast majority of the homes that have been currently built in that community. I can make a copy of it if I need to. I could talk about criteria and all that, but a lot of stuff has been already discussed. But one thing I want to mention is Forney has emphasized, and rightfully so, relationships in its value series. And I think what all these, the testimony of all these children and parents, what the testimony has shown that they cannot build relationships if they're being rezoned and they're switching schools every year, going into school each and every year without the previous batch of friends, parents making new relationships with, having to rebuild all that over and over again. Second to last, just story after story of just countless kids just crying, so upset about this rezoning. Just the kids who have told these great stories today, that's just a drop in the bucket compared to all the other kids who are extremely upset about this. Finally, I would ask, request that for Gateway, if you could grandfather in zones 1 and 2, because as others have said, that we purchased with, made our purchase knowing, or thinking that we're going to a certain set of schools. And grandfather zones 1 and 2, and the other zones, they can make the decisions for themselves. And we know you have a tough decision, we hope that's an acceptable compromise. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. That concludes those who signed up to speak. First, on behalf of the board, I want to thank everybody for having your prepared and your respectful and well-spoken comments tonight. We do want to thank all the stakeholders for taking time to be here tonight. I'd ask at this time, do I have any additional questions or discussions from the board? I hear none. May I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing?
Questions?
May I have a motion from the board to... Mr. Johnson? A second?
Second.
Mr. Andrews? It is now 6:49 p.m. and this public hearing is adjourned.